Next, old business. Consideration and action to approve a pathway for the expansion of pre-K programming as recommended by the Curriculum and Ed Planning Committee. Is there a motion? Mr. Balfan, seconded by Ms. Trevorrow. Will the superintendent please speak to the motion?
Yes, so as you know, tonight you are being asked to vote on the Curriculum Committee's recommendation to increase access to high-quality pre-kindergarten for 4-year-olds in Portland. In the fall of 2017, I asked the board to grant us the time to work with stakeholders across the system to determine how we achieve the promise of high-quality pre-kindergarten in Portland. Since that time, we've been working to the point that we are here today. Last spring, we brought you the results of the Data Innovation Project's evaluation of current programming. In the fall, we brought you the results of the subsequent community engagement efforts coordinated through Starting Strong. And finally, we articulated 3 pathways to achieving what we believe is needed expansion of pre-kindergarten for 4-year-olds. As you'll recall, this amounts to 9 additional classrooms over the next 5 years and will make public pre-K available to all students from economically disadvantaged backgrounds while keeping our enrollment socioeconomically diverse. During December and January, the Curriculum Committee met with the support of Malia Nally and the Starting Strong team of Matt Dubel and Tara Williams, and reviewed those 3 pathways. And as you know, the committee recommended Pathway 2, which combines both district-level expansion with expansion by community partners through an RFP solicitation process as needed. I want to stress that regardless of what we do tonight, it's important to understand that we are only at the beginning of this work. The findings from the research of the Data Innovation Program are not fully addressed by this proposal as it's being outlined today. Specifically, full-year programming and access to transportation were cited as 2 of the barriers to full participation in pre-kindergarten programs, and none of the solutions that were presented to the board, to the Curriculum Committee, actually fully address those. So we recognize that this is work in progress, and while we're extremely excited about the possibilities of the expansion of pre-kindergarten, we don't believe that our work is done by virtue of this vote tonight. So tonight what I'm going to ask is for staff to answer any follow-up questions that have been posed by board members at last week's workshop, and then turn it over to you for your deliberations.
So real quick before we get started, based on the discussion at our workshop last week and just some of the questions that have been raised, we can expect there to be an amendment offered at some point today. I just wanted to put it out there ahead of time that when we get to the board discussion part is when those amendments are probably going to be most effective. That'll be after we've heard for public comment, and then we'll follow the same question, public comment, and discussion protocol for the amendments and so on and so on. As you guys know, process, and this is probably an area that I can use a bit of caution. So if you guys can help me work along to make sure that we are clear in what we're saying here. I want to make sure that we're not confusing people. There's a lot of details in this work, and I'm asking for your support in running a real clear message here. So having said that, are there any questions on the motion? Ms. Victor?
I want to start with a clarification. The superintendent said that the proposal before us, which would add 140 slots, which in addition to the about 124 slots we currently have, would enable us to serve half of the 4-year-olds in Portland. The superintendent said that all students of economically disadvantaged backgrounds would be served, and I just want to ask the staff to clarify that, because of course about 55% of our overall student population, including the population of 4-year-olds, is disadvantaged. So that alone would be, over 260 seats that we've created. So the slots that we are saying we're creating are slots that would that include disadvantaged students going to programs now, attending programs now, that we either don't know their quality or we know that they're not high-quality programs. So we are not, in this proposal, ensuring that all students in Portland or all disadvantaged students are able to attend high-quality programs. Is that correct?
Malia? Matt or Malia, I don't know who's answering the questions, but.
So there's an assumption that students who are free and reduced lunch eligible, we have a certain percentage right now of those students who attend Head Start programming, and there's an assumption that that number of slots would continue to be available for low-income students who income qualify for Head Start. So we know a certain percentage of those students will continue to be attending Head Start. We also know from the data from Data Innovation Project that there were a certain percentage of free and reduced lunch eligible students who actually attended private preschools. And we do have a sense of how many are high quality and how many aren't, at least based on where they're rated on the quality rating system. And we know that those families most likely are taking advantage of the child care subsidy vouchers to do that and probably would choose to continue to do that. Some of the families might, try to opt into public pre-K classrooms, but some might continue to try to use vouchers with private preschools. And so those are some of the assumptions we were basing this estimate on. So you're right that at the end of 5 years, it's not expected that every single economically disadvantaged 4-year-old in the city would be in a public pre-K seat, but the expectation is that every single economically disadvantaged 4-year-old would have a seat in a preschool program somewhere in the city, and that what the expansion of public classrooms would do is basically provide that extra capacity that Head Start doesn't have and that the private preschools don't have.
Thank you. Just to be clear, the research is quite conclusive that in order to have the impact that we know we need, which is to really enable all kids to start kindergarten with an equal opportunity to succeed, that the pre-K experience has to be high quality. And looking at the data from the Data Innovation Project, only 27%, if you subtract out Head Start and our own classrooms, only 27% of our pre-K programs in Portland are deemed high quality. So just to be clear, we will leave economically disadvantaged kids in programs that are not high quality. Therefore, they will not have the opportunity to receive the high quality education that they need in order to be able to reduce achievement gaps and start kindergarten with an equal opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, it is true that not all of those economically disadvantaged 4-year-olds who were in private preschool, they were not all in either step 3 or 4 rated. A good percentage of them were. I can check on the number for you, but not every single one. I will note, just as a side note, beyond the efforts of the district with this, there are ongoing quality improvement processes that are attempting to improve the overall quality of the private preschools. So that's sort of an underlying effort that helps support any 4-year-old in the city who may be accessing that.
Any other questions? Ms. Bondo?
Yeah, just something that I want to follow up on this is that if we are so conscious about how many of those students from the ED, economically disadvantaged, they're going to miss to be on those classes and to have that foundation that we're looking for. What those strategies then we think then we can try to fast a little more, having those adding more classes for instead to have those 5 years, at least adding some more classes here, the faster way then you may think about it. Then we can try to serve a little more kids. So if we miss those students right now, those little kids right now, they're never going to have a chance in the future. So that means our achievement gap gonna keep going down because we going to have issues to try to make up those numbers. So we just need to try to realize that it's going to be an issue right now. If we need to come up with something faster, we need to start planning right now, or maybe have some resolution on the board for the community to try to think about how we moving down to the universal pre-K, or we just expanding those seats because we are in need right now.
Thank you, Ms. Barber. So just, Ms. Moreno, we're going to go to you right now. Just want to, just once again, point that we're in the question section of the process. Ms. Moreno?
Thank you. I feel like I've had plenty of time to ask questions along the way, and this is just more of asking for the public to hear. So as we've talked about universal pre-K, and it's been in our resolution, and we've had board members that were very supportive of the universal pre-K idea. Just wanted to ask staff, this is the 5-year plan, and so when may you be thinking about even, the 10-year plan, I guess, or what, has that even been thought about at all?
I think conversations are starting now in terms of, what is our ultimate goal. So what we need is a clear target, timeline, and strategy so we can really do this work. And so I think that's been our orientation, is get aligned among ourselves internally with you all and with the community about what we're trying to accomplish, what's the ultimate goal, when do we hope to be there as a community, what's the best strategy for getting there. But I think we as staff are certainly open and excited to talk about the future as well, and further expansions. So I think our perspective is really getting clarity in terms of what's the community's desire and direction, and do we have the resources to support what we're trying to accomplish.
I just thank you for that, and I do recognize definitely all of this is contingent on resources to support it all. I guess it's just, and I appreciate you. This is a really great starting place in the 5 years. It's not as fast as I would like to see it, but in turning in this into a question again, I don't really have another question. I just said thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions, Ms. Davis?
I'm trying, because you've talked about possibly amending, and I'm trying to find the language that we're approving, because I simply find the item before us, consideration action to approve a pathway for the expansion of pre-K programming as recommended by the Curriculum and Ed Planning Committee, but I don't have their minutes, I don't have the language they approved. I'm not sure if I should look at I'm looking at one sort of chart that talks about a whole, breaks out different pathways. I'm not sure what we would amend, and I'm not sure actually what we're approving.
So you are, and Malia, Matt, help me with this. You're approving the, or Mr. Balfons, as chair of the curriculum committee, you're approving the recommendation, which was to proceed with pathway 2, which was to have, I believe this is correct, 5 classrooms in Portland Public Schools buildings and 4 in partner organizations, and that those partner organizations would be via RFP when we reached the point where we needed those. So I think that's in essence what you're being asked to vote on.
So if we were to amend, we don't have the minutes from the committee. Having gone to several of the committee's meetings and then looking at the pretty voluminous amount of documents we've got, one of the things I'm looking at the moment has got different colors. It's a chart about reducing barriers and logistics and strategies, but there are a number of places. We have PowerPoints that describe Pathway 2. I'm a little concerned that we actually don't have concrete language that says, here is Pathway 2, here is the version because there were multiple kinds of discussions along the way. Here's the version that the committee is recommending, and that we actually have a language that sort of spells that out, or a document that really spells that out, because I'm not sure what we would offer an amendment on at this point. You know, do I amend this chart? Do I amend the PowerPoint? I'm concerned, especially if we're going to start amending, that, and we don't have a clear document that we're working from, that we'll get in trouble. The board does not like to amend on the fly, and since nothing was circulated prior to the board meeting, I think that's what we're contemplating doing, but I'm not sure what to amend.
Ms. Davis, that's exactly the kind of help that I was looking for. I said that's exactly the kind of help that I was looking for. Ms. Victor.
I agree with the concerns that Ms. Davis has raised. I attended the meeting where the curriculum committee did pass the recommendation, and the language that they passed was simply pathway 2, without specificity of, are we including transportation vouchers in this first year, with a commitment to figure out a more complete transportation plan moving forward, and other issues like that, which were discussed in detail, but then not included in the actual final language that was passed, which simply was, we're going to endorse pathway 2.
Can I speak? Yeah, I mean, I think I hear what you're saying about the language, and so direction on sort of what's needed would be appreciated. I think in terms of the pathway, and Mr. Belfons, if you want to speak to this as well, it's probably good. As it was described, that's in the documentation and in the PowerPoints, it was about expanding by 140 seats over 5 years with the mix of 55% and 44%, with a demographic mix that reflects the district overall, and that the pathway, as described in the materials, was to do that through a mix of PPS and partner classrooms. In those documents, it is acknowledged that things like transportation are not currently a part of that. So I think the recommendation that came out of committee was more narrow than things that have been discussed since. It is my understanding that it's exactly what was reflected in the materials as they were in committee.
Mr. Balfins?
Yes, that's what that's what the committee recommended, was pathway 2 as presented to us, and as presented did not include transportation, and we made a note of that. That we wanted the board to consider transportation when we got to this point here, what we wanted. But yes, as presented to us, Pathway 2, not only with the Pathway 2 PowerPoint, but relying on the initial background that was presented in the first workshop as well.
Ms. Morioni and then Ms. Davis.
I can completely understand where my fellow board members are coming from without very articulate verbiage of what we're voting on. I get that. Looking through our packet, though, I did see that we have one of the documents, it's called Pre-K Workshop Financial Pathway number 2. It breaks it down financially, but it also breaks it down as to what it means, like per staff, like what's happening first year, second year, third year. I mean, it breaks it down pretty well, and also attaches all the financials to it. So it's kind of mixed in, all of our stuff in our board packet. But that's if you want to reference that potentially, but I can understand how specific.
So can I,
yeah.
Malia, what would you reference to as the sort of the best document for the board to use for an amendment on that?
If we're using the materials from the workshops, I would use the workshop that maybe I should look in your board book, but that describes Pathway 2. So in the final, or in the last board meeting when we did workshop on this, We gave you an overview of, the background context, and then we included the slides from workshop 2 that detailed out pathway 2 so that you would have the detail. So from workshop, I would go to that and look at the detail there along with the supporting financials. I also understand the point being raised, but in terms of what you have right now, that's what describes what committee voted on.
Yep. 1 second. So we were going to Ms. Davis. If you don't mind, I want to just drop something in. Ms. Nally, just a moment ago, you said, when you were briefly talking about the level of direction you needed, you said target, timeline, and strategy. Maybe I'm not quoting you exactly, but that's kind of what I wrote down. So in my interpretation of that, and I'm saying this to see if this gives us some direction in the discussion, target is the number of students. We talked about 140 versus what would be true universal, which is closer to 250 plus. Timeline would be the 5 years, which we're talking about if we wanted to be more aggressive with that.
Right.
And then strategy would be who's going to teach it and where.
Correct.
So
and with the details that are in your PowerPoint from workshop on a few more details, but yes.
And I'm being very kind of vague with this. Yep. So, and again, I offer that just as a way to navigate the discussion from here on out. So, Ms. Davis?
This is really not the way we do our work. We usually have something we have a reference document, we have an order, we have a resolution, we have a motion, and I don't believe we really have a motion before us that has sufficient detail for us to vote. What I'm hearing is it was described in a meeting I didn't attend. And I don't have a document here that I can point to at the moment that says this is the document that represents that. I don't have the minutes from that meeting. I guess I would suggest that perhaps we should postpone this, actually craft a motion that addresses the things that you've talked about, target, timeline, and strategy, clearly so that the public can see exactly in our agenda what we're going to vote on. And we can see what we're voting on, and if we want to amend it, we have the ability to actually amend the language of the motion. Because at this point, I would be amending a description or a PowerPoint, and that's not the way we've ever done business in my elected service. So I'm very hesitant to do that. I guess, perhaps what I should do is as a path forward would be to move to postpone this to our next meeting, which is a date certain, with the request that staff and the committee develop a motion that actually has sufficient detail that it can either be approved or amended, and we can take action, and the public knows exactly what it is that we're working on in our agenda, so they can see it. And in our supporting documents, it's clearly called out as, here's the motion that we are going to do. So I don't know if I would have a second for that approach.
Can I make one clarification on that, Ms. Davis? Just so absolutely understand, and that's, for you all to decide there. Just one thing, and maybe I misunderstood you, but in terms of the pathway to description, that was not just at committee, it was in our workshop at the last full board meeting and should be in board documents and notes there. So small clarification I wanted to point out there. Okay.
But a description is not a motion. And that's kind of where I think I'm getting stuck, is that I would like a motion that that's on my agenda that the public has seen that we can amend, and we don't have that to work from. We have a description, and so I'd be going back to amend a description that is not a motion, I guess, and I think we usually deal in motions and amendments, so I don't know if the board has an appetite to postpone and develop that, or if someone else has another alternative.
So I will, at the risk of sounding defensive, point out that this is the second reading of this item, that we had a workshop on it. And we would have been perfectly happy to develop a motion had somebody said something before you raised it in the last 15 minutes. Having said that, and at the risk of asking all of these people who have sat here for a long period of time to wait a little bit longer to deal with that, if you gave us 20 minutes, we probably could sit here and write a full motion that would then be subject to your amendments and so on. Or alternately, I would suggest that maybe we collectively write that motion here now with whatever amendments it is that you want to offer in to that original motion. We can do it either of those two ways. We can, sort of ask everybody to go and, grab a cup of coffee, and, Malia, Matt, and, Mark and I can go sit in the corner and write this, or we could try to do that collectively.
Mr. Atkinson and Ms. Figdor afterwards.
I took some quick notes Thank you, Ms. Davis. I took some quick notes. I noticed the target timeline and strategy sort of level. I think we need to drill into what are the decisions that staff needs us to make to move forward, and then Ms. Nally rattled off a bunch of the details of this, and I think it sort of encapsulates maybe that layer, at least in my mind. So 140 seats, 5-year timeline, matching Portland economic demographics, mix of PPS and partner classrooms, and that transportation is not considered yet. Those were the ones the things that Ms. Nally gave us just now, and I think that may be sort of the scope of the decision that we need to make. So maybe it is just something that we can pull off, putting together a paragraph or two that encompasses all those things and any details that I missed. I'm open to that. Yes.
Ms. Figdor?
Thank you. I encourage us to do the work right now and be respectful, of all the folks who are here tonight, 9:15, and really dig in. They're here for this work, and so that we do it tonight and get us ideally come to resolution tonight. I do want to say that there are key issues, like in the workshop at our meeting last week on Pathway 2, we still are assuming that the full costs of the district is bearing the full costs of providing before and after care, and that we know is not realistic. We heard last week some estimates of how many of our families might choose to use before and after care, and in fact, rather than the program costing us a lot, we're finding that in fact it won't cost us anything. So, and yet the budget implications haven't been incorporated into the core model that was presented to us. So I do think we got to get all these issues right, and I encourage us to do it now. But let's get it all on the table.
Go ahead, Ms. Nally, and then Ms. Bondo, you had a question?
I just wanted to offer that in terms of doing it right now, I feel like with Mr. Balfons and Alicia and the superintendent could do it in much less than 20 minutes in terms of giving you just that foundational point, because I think you're going to have a lot of revisions and reactions to that, but in terms of what was reflected in Pathway 2 coming out of committee, I think I could bang it out in 5 minutes. Just if that helps take a break and then move it a little bit more quickly, because I think the meat for you all will be in how you want to amend that.
Ms. Bondo?
Yeah, and I'm agree to try to use the 20 minutes, then we can try to put a clear proposal, because this is so important issues, and we need to make sure that we have the clear understanding of what we're going to do. And then all the recommendations that we have done about the teachers, about all the ethic. So everything needs to be on the paper, so we know exactly when we're voting on some pathways, then we know he will go through the different directions. So I think we can take the time to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Mondo. I just have a question for the board real quick. I find that there is maybe two different discussions going on. One, more of the process itself and how does an amendment really explain the work that we're intending to move forward. And second, the specificity, that's a tough one for me, the details of the pathway. And so in regards to the first part as process, I, for example, can envision an amendment to the motion that literally stops at the word programming. So it says, I'd amend the motion to say consideration and action to approve the pathway of pre-K programming. And then in our deliberation and what we actually approve, then we go into the details that specify the target timeline and strategy. That way we do find a process that fits what we normally do, and we get to the details that some of us are interested in including into the pathway. Any answers? I'm more than happy. Ms. Trevor?
So I think that the gist of what Pathway 2 is to expand pre-K by 140 seats in 5 years through a combination of classrooms in Portland Public Schools, elementary schools, and in partnership classrooms. And I think that should be our motion to start with, and then we can amend from there.
Ms. Davis?
I think one of the key issues in this is whose teachers are teaching. And that doesn't address that. So I guess we would need to add.
That would be an amendment. It doesn't address a lot of things. It leaves a lot of things open, but that was the, I think, the gist of Pathway 2. So I think that, if we want it to be more specific, we can do that by amendment. We have a process to do it. We have a starting point.
I guess I would respectfully disagree. I think that Pathway 2 very clearly indicates, in the pathways, it was described whose staff various teachers were, whether they were Portland Public Schools employees or whether they were employees of the partner site. And Pathway 2, as I understood it, and this could be the danger of working with a description and a PowerPoint rather than a motion, is that in Pathway 2, your location determined, to some extent, because that doesn't hold true for the classroom at Paths, but sort of your location, whether you were at a partner site, determined whether you were a partner site employee or if you were at a Portland Public Schools location, you were a Portland Public Schools employee. And I think this was the subject of a lot of discussion in the last meeting in our workshop. I guess, and so I think that's a key thing, and I know it's a definite concern for our union. Whose employees are these as we set a new direction for this program? So I think to get that description of Pathway 2, we would have to say whose employees. And
I agree with Ms. Davis that the Pathway 2 proposal was more specific than what Board Member Terraro offered, in that it did say specifically that 5 classrooms, and we've actually been able to name where those classrooms are, and that's a part of the materials. Would be in Portland Public Schools buildings, and the other 4 would be in partner organizations. And, in fact, that the arrangement as it was originally proposed was for only the employees in the Portland Public School locations to be Portland Public School employees. And so again, if that's helpful for us to specify that, to add that to what Ms. Trevorrow suggested, I think we would be, and I would venture to say that Ms. Nally has already done that as we move forward.
Mr. Atkinson?
Just one more detail that I would add as well is the wraparound services. I think it's important that that be included as part of the, as one of the bullets.
Again, before and after care is included in the proposal. Wraparound services are not.
Okay.
So, yes, that is true, and transportation is not in what the committee reviewed.
And it may be good to be explicit about those things that are not yet considered but are considerations.
Victor, give me just 1 second.
I don't know.
Ms. Victor, go ahead.
May I ask a question that's not related to the process right now?
So just real quick before we go, the reason I stopped in and I asked the superintendent, we were getting a mix of discussion and questions thrown here, and I really want to define the part of the process that we're in right now. I feel like like we're probably closer to agreeing ultimately what we will do. What we're having a difficulty with is what process we're going to take to get there. So I just want us to direct the questions to help us figure out what process, and then I feel like when we get to the discussion part, then we can get into the specifics that some of us are really eager to dive into, because I think they already came up through some of the comments. So Ms. Victor, and then we'll come back to Ms. Davis.
Sorry, it was already on. My question is, if we're creating a program that is going to be much more feasible for families across the city, in that we're providing before and after care, it's a full-day program, and we're providing some transportation, ideally we're providing some transportation with a commitment to do better in the future in terms of transportation. And yet we're offering slots, or we have slots for just half of the children in half of the 4-year-olds in the city. What are we going to do when the program is oversubscribed? What's the process for actually choosing who gets to participate and who doesn't? The only guidelines we have now is that we want a demographic mix in our classrooms that matches our overall demographics in the city. So my question is, what does the system look like once this program is actually a really workable program for families and people want to participate and it becomes oversubscribed, since we're providing slots for just half of our 4-year-olds?
Superintendent, were you able to carry that?
The way that we currently do that is by a lottery, so it would be the same. That's the way that it's been envisioned.
So, like, first come, first served?
No, lottery. I don't actually know, and I don't know exactly how the lottery is determined, but there is a process where when there are more applicants than there are slots, people are put on waiting lists and then are notified when a slot becomes available. So it would be by that process.
Ms. Davis?
I think.
One question I have, our current state is we have 3 partnership classrooms, and they're described as Catherine Morrill, Youth and Family Outreach, and Opportunity Alliance. Are all 3 of those located off-site?
So, yes, they're off-site. Catherine Morrill is using our space at Paths.
So,
but they don't serve, there's no kids at Paths, so it's not the same as, for example, the program at Riverton, which serves Riverton students. The program at Catherine Morrill serves students, if I recall correctly, from Lyseth, from Rowe, and, maybe from some other building that doesn't currently have a pre-K program.
but it is a legacy program that has been there for many years and has always served a very broad demographic across the city, and at one time it's located in a Portland Public Schools building, and at one time the teacher for that program was a Portland Public Schools employee.
I don't
Yes.
know.
They were.
Very possible.
And the change was made when that person, I believe, retired. and it was shifted to, it was essentially outsourced. So I think that one of the things we need to be careful of, because it has occurred to me that a lot of our discussion was about the forward direction of how we would go with this program, and some of the comments coming back from the partners, raised some issues, but I think that and I may be going a little bit into discussion, but I think there's a question that comes out of this for the board that perhaps we haven't thought about. It didn't occur to me until after the last workshop, which is the existing sites, because we have a mix there. We have 3 teachers who are paid by outside providers, one of which is located in a Portland Public Schools building, 2 of which are located off-site. They are currently in existence. I don't think Pathway 2 spoke at all to the existing situation and how those teachers who currently work in those classrooms, which we weren't doing away with, it was what we were going to do in the future, how they would be compensated and treated. And one of my concerns in this is that we come up with a coherent program that is the same across the district. If it's our pre-K program, if it is operated by Portland Public Schools, then it is staffed by Portland Public Schools, whether it is located in our buildings or not, and whether they have been traditionally before or not. But from this point going forward, and that's one of the places where we need to have some, that's not even in the Pathway 2, so that's got to be added, or there's got to be something so we can amend it, because it doesn't talk, Pathway 2 doesn't talk about how we will deal with the 3 existing partnership teachers.
But it does, I mean,
Or I guess it does in this, it
presumes that it
but it does not
continues.
explicitly say that.
Yeah.
There,
I mean,
it was
we can-
silent on that.
Yeah, we
So-
will add that to the resolution, I mean, in the explanations along the way, that was explained, but yes.
Again, I wasn't there.
Fair enough.
And last one.
Yes, Ms. Figler.
I have one last question for now, which is, if we were to, instead of creating a program that serves half of 4-year-olds in the city, created a universal program, a truly universal program, and open to every family who wanted to participate, my estimate is that that would be about 18 classrooms, so about double our existing proposal. Taking into account the 3 Head Start classrooms, that's there's 4, but 1 is a PPS classroom now. So taking into account those 3 Head Start classrooms, assuming they would stay in existence, is 18 the correct number? This is assuming that not every family participates, that I think the average that we've heard from Starting Strong is that we'd expect about 83% of families to participate, which led me to the estimate of about 18 additional classrooms from where we are today. So I'm wondering, is that a good number from which to work from, if we are tonight to consider making this a truly universal program?
I don't know. I can take out a calculator. I mean, I'm assuming that that's what you did. Numbers can change over time, so I think by the time we got to, but I think, stating the intent to be fully universal as opposed to the way that we've articulated, that is a distinct difference from what what you have in front of you. So I'm not, 18 sounds fine.
I have one clarifying question following Ms. Davis' comments. I understand that the ed techs in the current pre-K classrooms are PPS employees. Is that accurate? The ed techs in each of the classrooms are not employed by the community partners.
I don't know the answer to that.
Not the other ed techs.
Not at YFO, not at TOA.
Okay. So the path ed tech is a PPS. Okay. Ms. Morioni?
I don't know, this might be completely wrong to think like this, but so what we're trying to do is look at outward, 5 years beyond. I'm just curious, and I'm sorry to throw this monkey wrench in here. The reason why we're kind of up against a wall right now is trying to get financial numbers, because we need to get this baked into the budget. The staff does for us. And even in option 1, option 2, year 1, it's adding 2 classrooms, and it has an actual budget amount already allocated there. I'm just curious, there's a lot of heavy detail building out the whole thing that I'm not even sure. Again, a couple of things come to mind, which is still around what we've talked about the budget, adding the transportation questions, and wraparound services, all of those things. I'm still, even moving this forward out of curriculum, I can settle with year 1, but beyond that, and as we've talked about, even when we had our previous workshop about it, I'm just curious, is there any way maybe to just get this moving and out, if we could vote right now just on moving on year 1? But with the intent that this will be brought back to us to, again, continue to work on for, I'm just wondering. It might not be, because it's overwhelming to think about. I don't know.
I think, I'm sorry, Ms. Victor, did you have something?
I was just going to respond, but I'm fine if you would.
So one thing, I think that there's some work here with Mr. Balfans and Ms. Nally to help us through the process. I think just in an effort to acknowledge that we have a lot of folks here that want to speak, maybe we'll move on to public comment, allow some of the logistics stuff to take place, and then when we get to the board discussion, hopefully we have a better understanding of how to move forward. So having said that, if there's anybody here that'd like to address the board, please come up to the podium, and once you're there, I'll try to explain our rules for public comment again. Thank you. So if you don't mind, please state your name, your address. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. There's a little timer there in front of the podium for you to follow. And if you don't mind addressing your comments to the chair of the board.
Okay. My name is Sasha Shunk, and my address is 70 Frost Street here in Portland. So, good evening. So, my name again, Sasha Shunk, right? I'm a nationally accredited family child care provider in Portland. Family child care is also known as home-based care. It means I live in the same space that I provide early child care and education services. So, I'm pleased that you're considering pathway number 2. I feel a mixture of options is the best choice for parents. Unfortunately, family child care is still being left out. Portland currently budgets per classroom, and the current proposal reflects the continuation of that. Even if I decided to only accept pre-K children, the maximum slots I could offer is 12. So I would never be picked as a site, because why would Portland pay me for a classroom of 12 when they could pay a center for the same rate for a classroom of 16? And the answer is they wouldn't. I feel this will not be Portland's only expansion. Therefore, I feel family childcare needs to be considered now for future pre-K developments. There are many children where a larger setting is not the best fit, and this is where family childcare can help with that population. Family childcare is also naturally inclusive because we are equipped to support a wide range of developmental abilities. Children's social emotional skills are the foundational building blocks to learning. Continuity of care is extremely important when it comes to building these skills. Without a solid foundation, children will struggle to build their house of academics. My concern is when Portland decides to continue their program citywide, family child care providers will be left out of the equation. Thus, parents will be forced to leave our programs in order to be able to access free public pre-K. And for some children, transitioning to a new program for 1 year, only to transition again to kindergarten, will put too much stress and anxiety on the child and family. If the child was able to continue their education in the same program, they would continue to thrive and not have setbacks. My business, honestly, will not suffer if you take away my 4-year-olds. But my concern is the 4-year-olds will be the ones to suffer. Another thing which bothers me greatly about the elementary school pre-K classrooms is the playgrounds. These playgrounds are designed for children 5 to 12 years old. 4-year-olds, not 4-year-olds. Consider, too, there will be 3-year-olds in your program if they have a birthday before October 15th. Have you checked to ensure the insurance company will pay if any of these children get hurt on equipment which is not designed for them? This is where community partners are the best choice, as we have outdoor spaces designed for preschoolers. So how can Portland ensure family childcare is part of the bigger picture? My suggestion is to include a per-student payment model. This way, if I only had 4 or 6 slots available, my payment would reflect that. It could also help to encourage new family childcare providers to open for business, thus truly embracing community neighborhood schooling. So please make sure Portland is ready to meet the diverse needs of families and ensure every child has the opportunity to attend a high-quality preschool program. And I want to thank Mark Balfont. He visited my program, and I would like to again invite all board members to visit my family child care program. Thank you. 2 seconds over.
Nice job. Anybody else? State your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Camelia Babson Haley, and I live at 10 Beale Street in Portland, and I am the Executive Director of Youth and Family Outreach, one of the partnership classrooms in the public pre-K for Portland. We are halfway, how many days through our 6th year in this partnership. Of having our classroom, a pre-K classroom, embedded into our early care and education program. So a couple things that came up for me tonight and in past meetings that I've been to are the full day language and extended day not wraparound, but before and after care. I'm a little curious about what that means. Does that mean full school day, or does that mean full work day for parents? So I'm just wondering if that's been fully clarified. If any of that is offered for free in the schools, it will be in direct competition with existing programs that have to receive a fee for service to keep their doors open. So one of the things I encourage board members to do, the board to do, is multiple options, just as Sasha was saying. Our model at YFO has been incredibly successful. It works for parents, it works for children. We've been caring for children at the age of 5 for over 30 years now. We know how to do it. We have that infrastructure. We need programs that meet the needs of everyone, all incomes. I worry about those middle-of-the-road people that don't qualify for a subsidy and could use a break on the four-year-old care for their child. Think about in school, pre-K day in the school day in the school, out of school programs, partnership programs, meeting the full work day for families. And then if it is full day in the schools, just remember that they're 4-year-olds. One of the things that's really important for them and is mandated by licensing is that they need a nap. These are the brain development years, and children's brains develop while they're sleeping, and that's the reason why they still need a nap when they're 4. They need unstructured time for play and exploration to work on the things that they've learned during the more structured part of the morning. Expanding classrooms into community partners eliminates barriers such as transportation. It's not an issue for families if they can drop off before they have to be at work and pick up after they're done with work. They have a slot for the full year, so that takes away that barrier. I had the good fortune of working with School Readiness Consulting and Starting Strong with their work to look at different models around the country. And there's lots of really good things going on out there. I don't know if they've received that document that shows all the different pathways that are used, but there's lots of models around the country that are using a mixed model delivery system. And I encourage to just think outside the box. I guess that's my final word. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Sue Olafson. I'm president of the Portland Education Association, and as you know, I represent over 700 teachers and almost 200 ed techs. I want to apologize in advance. I've been sick, and if I get into a coughing fit, just give me a second. After attending the district's 3 pre-K pathways workshops held in January, reviewing the district's 50-plus page January 2018 research report on pre-K expansion, and listening to our current PPS pre-K teachers describe their experiences while being employed by outside providers, I've come to understand, and the PEA has come to understand, several things. The need for and the value of quality pre-K programs to student success, especially for children growing up in poverty. That transportation is a barrier, and that for pre-K families to access pre-K programs, the pre-K classrooms need to be located in their neighborhoods. That PPS does not have the current capacity to locate all pre-K expansion classrooms within the Portland Public School buildings. And that the large disparity in teacher compensation, and that means salary, benefits, and pension between PPS pre-K teachers and outside provider pre-K teachers leads to high turnover in outside provider pre-K programs because private pre-K teachers move into public pre-K positions as soon as there are openings. We know that because our teachers have done that, and we heard from the Opportunity Alliance people that that's what's happening to them. High turnover is not considered a quality indicator of pre-K programming, according to PPS and Starting Strong's research report. So on February 6th, the school board's curriculum committee recommended pathway number 2, which is 5 new pre-K classrooms located within Portland school buildings with pre-K teachers and ed techs employed by Portland schools, plus 4 new pre-K classrooms located outside of Portland school buildings with pre-K teachers and ed techs employed by outside provider partners. The PEA cannot support this recommendation because pathway number 2 does not address the large compensation disparity between PPS staff and outside provider staff, which will continue to lead to high staff turnover described in your own report. This impacts quality pre-K programming for students. Current PPS pre-K teachers and outside provider pre-K teachers do the same work. They engage in curriculum development, lesson planning, instruction and assessment, and they meet with parents. Also, all PPS and outside provider pre-K staff, I understand, meet about monthly together right now to engage in ongoing professional development around pre-K curriculum. During these PD meetings, think about it, the room is filled with the haves and the have-nots, those with professional contracts and union representation, and those without. And the vast majority of those without are women. The PEA cannot support a pathway that does not value equal pay.
Do you need another minute, or you're about to wrap it up?
1 more minute.
I think we're good with that. Go ahead.
Thank you. What the PEA can support is a hybrid between Pathway 1 and Pathway 2, which would provide all Portland pre-K teachers and ed techs, no matter the location of their classroom, whether it's within a Portland school building or within an outside provider partner building, that they are paid by Portland schools and are represented by a Portland schools collective bargaining agreement. This hybrid eliminates the large compensation disparity, that is salary, benefits, and retirement pension, among pre-K staff, and thereby reduces turnover in outside provider pre-K programs, leading to improved stability and quality programming. The hybrid also addresses access to pre-K programming by allowing pre-K classrooms to be placed in the neighborhoods where they are needed the most, whether that be in a Portland school or not. The district has experience with doing this with other outside partners, Cathedral, Street Academy, Spring Harbor Hospital. But what this hybrid does is it provides stable, quality, accessible instruction to pre-K students and provides equitable professional compensation to pre-K teachers and ed techs, and therefore fulfills all 4 goals of the Portland Promise: equity, achievement, people, and the whole child. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? El alcalde.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Ethan Strimling. I'm here in my capacity as the mayor of the city of Portland and also a resident, obviously. I want to thank you tonight for your work on universal pre-K, and I'm here to encourage you to move with all deliberate speed to try to get us to full universal pre-K as quickly as possible. I just want to read something real quick to you. This is from the Portland Press-Herald. School officials are developing a plan to greatly increase the number of pre-kindergarten classrooms for 4-year-olds in the city's public schools. By next fall, the superintendent and others hope to double the number of pre-kindergarten classrooms to 6 and seek outside funding that may ensure all 4-year-olds in Portland have access to quality education. That was written in 2010. 2010. That got us to 6. I believe we're at 8. And at that time, we were talking about let us get to universal. I hope tonight, let me step back. I appreciate that we took a couple years off to sort of take our time to get it right so that we could then move quickly. I was supportive because we were adding a class, you were adding a class every year, and we slowed that down. And I had very valuable conversations with Superintendent Botana about that, about the importance of taking the time to get it right so that we could then move quickly. And I hope tonight that we will take the reins and say, now is the moment that we need to put ourselves on a path to truly universal pre-K. Every child in the city of Portland needs this program. There is just no research out there that doesn't say we must invest in early childhood. You know this way better than I do. And I know tonight you'll be debating whether you should go to 9 or whether you should go to 18. I strongly encourage you to get to universal pre-K, and if that is 18, put us on that path. And I promise to you, and I pledge to you, as the mayor of this city, and as the chair of the city council, I will do everything in my power to help get the funding and the resources that are necessary to fully fund that this year and every year that I am in that seat. It is too important an issue. Thank you for all of your work on this. I know that you understand the importance of achieving it, and I hope that tonight you take that step to finally put Portland on a path to universal public pre-K for all of our 4-year-olds in the city of Portland. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Deborah Newman and I live at 35 Waverly Street in Portland. And I just want to speak to the equity component of teachers being Portland Public School employees versus privately employed. I keep hearing that there's an equity component in the Portland Promise, as part of the Portland Promise, and I feel very strongly that all pre-K teachers and ed techs and staff should be Portland Public School employees. They should be treated equitably in salary and benefits and protections. Also, in the if part of the mission statement is to build relationships, I have to ask what kind of relationship is built when some teachers are treated as less than other teachers. And if all teachers and staff are Portland Public School employees, they will feel that they are an integral part of the school community. They will know that they are valued, that they have a role and expectations that are the same as their colleagues, that they're not less than. They have a clear understanding of who they report to, a principal, superintendent, school committee. They are respected by students, community, and colleagues as the professionals that they are, and that there is a consistent curriculum, which I think is very important for pre-K and leads to success in kindergarten. And I just want to give you an analogy of teachers being Portland Public School employees versus private. It's like buying a ticket on an airplane. So you get on the plane and your ticket's blue. So you're told, oh, you have a blue ticket. That means you're in the cost-cutting section. So you get to sit in the back of the plane. You get a plastic seat instead of a cushion seat. You don't get a meal. You don't get an oxygen mask or a life vest because we have to cut costs. So, sorry, but that's just the way it is. So again, I urge you, in considering this amendment or whatever you're voting for tonight, to have all employees be employees of Portland Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Pius Ali. I live on 184 Pearl Street. I am a city councillor, but I'm not testifying as a city councillor. I'm testifying as a staff member of Portland Empowered, a program that works with parents from across the city of Portland. I earlier came here with 2 parents, and I think they couldn't wait any longer, so they left. And so I'm going to speak on their behalf. Thank you for all the work you have put in this so far. Tonight you have an opportunity to take the first step towards closing the achievement gap between the many diverse students that we have in the district. In my daytime job, I work with many different parents, and most of what I hear from them is, I can't afford to pay for childcare. And by expanding this, you are going to make it possible for them to bring their kids so that they can go to work. So I will encourage you to move forward and expand a program that will meet the need of all the students and families that we have in our community. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lori Moses. I live at 5 Thomas Drive in Scarborough. I'm the executive director of Catherine Morrill Day Nursery. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but a couple things. The pay equity just really bothers me. I've been in the childcare field for over 30 years and have worked with, infants through preschool as well as school-age children. And my teachers work year-round. They work 8-hour days with a half-hour unpaid break. Most of them have bachelor's degrees, some have associate's degrees. And my teachers who have the 081 certification in my program make $20,000 less than public school teachers. So I get that you want everybody to be on the same playing field, but the teachers that work in childcare work so hard doing the same job, and we do care for the birth to 3. And if you look at brain development, which 85% of brain development occurs by age 3, and then the question came up at the workshop last week is, we don't want to subsidize the birth to 3. So I just want to explain that a little bit. We're not funded by every taxpayer in a city or a town. We're funded by parents who pay. And it is expensive, and it's also expensive to run if you want to keep teachers, which are the backbone of a good program. To be able to serve infants, we have 8 children and 2 teachers. To be able to serve preschoolers, we have 2 teachers and either 16 or 18 children. We have the building, insurance, food, equipment, supplies, all of that. And so if you divide that by the infants, which only have 8 children in the room, our costs would have been about $450 a week. Parents can't afford that. Preschool, and then the toddlers is about $350. Parents can't afford that. The preschool, between our 3 preschool classrooms that we have on site, is about between $220 and $280. So what that does, by having the preschoolers with more children, it spreads the costs. If you were to look at a resource room with maybe 6 children and try to look at the cost there, you look at the whole school. But and I said this at the very first meeting, the problem is that childcare is really expensive. I lose probably 6 to 8 4-year-olds every year, and it's not the low-income families. It's the families that say, "Ooh, I can have free pre-K, and I'll hire a nanny to pick them up at 1:30. That's who I lose. We prioritize low to moderate income families. We're 100 years old this year. So we've been doing this for a really long time. I believe in public pre-K. I believe in mixed delivery system.
Do you need another minute, or you're almost?
Few more seconds. Thank you. The system is the problem. And so we all want children to have good outcomes, but we are also, I don't know the answer to this, but I know that when I hear that it's income and women just, that are not having equal pay, and it's, the back of the bus or the ticket, and I think, but childcare is even at the bottom. And we are the infrastructure for your parents to work, for your economy. So we need to work together on this. We all want children to have good outcomes as a society, but it just is really hard to hear that it's really hard to hear because my teachers work a lot more hours and make a whole lot less money. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, John Thibodeau, 114 Clinton Street, and I'm speaking for Protect Our Neighborhood Schools. Thank you all for being here. A long night. The first thing I wanted to just say is, public hearing started at 9:30 tonight, and this is an issue for families and parents. And I would just ask in the future if there's going to be really large substantive policy proposals like this is, that the board somehow make this so that it is more accessible to people who this is very important to. It was really disappointing to wait 2.5 hours for a public hearing. That's the bad stuff. Positively, I really appreciate the board taking this initiative to address inequity and the achievement gap. And it's really great to see that you all are so committed to it and that you really get it. And I think a lot of people in the community really appreciate that. And I know a lot of time has gone into this. With that said, I think we have an opportunity to do this right? And I think supporting what the Portland Education Association has said about employees and compensation, that this is very important. There's no reason for them to be treated differently than our other instructors or other teachers or other staff. So I would ask you just to consider this, that we have an opportunity here, and not to get kind of dragged down on what we can or cannot do, but let's be bold about this. What can we do? We can create a gold standard program for this city that can be a model for other communities throughout the state. We can do that. And I think some really innovative thinking has gone on here with the hybrid project, hybrid proposal of the PEA, using locations that are both private and public, but making sure that they are compensated in a way that is fair and just. So we support that, multiple locations. And I also think, we need to be bold. Now, we know that the first year is kind of baked in as far as what the budget is. So we're looking at 2 classrooms for that first year. But let's be bold. Let's go for it. Let's go for universal coverage for pre-K. And let's commit to it. And let's do everything we can in our power. And I think as a community organization, I know there's probably others as well as businesses. Let's pull it together. Let's make this happen. Let's do everything we can. If it turns out next year that we come up short, then we do. But let's go for it. Let's aspire to it. Let's be bold. So that's all I got. Thanks.
Thank you. So real quick, before we carry on, we're getting to 10 o'clock, at which time the board would have to vote for us to continue our business meeting. Before we get to that, however, in an effort to be transparent, my colleagues earlier this meeting passed me a note for me to consider whether we would put the pre-K, this public hearing, or rather this item on the agenda earlier, and I decided to keep the agenda as is, so I'll take full responsibility for keeping people here this late for this topic. So again, it was a decision that I made at this time. I would also like to point out that as part of the curriculum committee's work throughout the workshops, those were incredibly inclusive workshops that did allow opportunity for the public to participate. So we have had at least some opportunity to hear from folks, though of course not at this point of the work. So I certainly recognize the late hours. So having said that, we need a motion to continue our work after the hour of 10 o'clock. So Ms. Victor, seconded by Mr. Atkinson. So all those in favor of continuing our meeting past the hour of 10 o'clock, please indicate. 1, 2, 3. This is one, so I'm going to count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those opposed? 2. The motion passes 6-2 with the students voting in the majority. Before we carry on, I again want to acknowledge that it is late, and I clearly recognize that that people are tired. I hope though that we can maybe now get to the clear up some of the confusion that we had earlier. We were in public comment, so if there was anybody else lined up, please come up to the podium. No more public comment, so we'll close that. I'm looking over towards Mr. Wolfens, but I'm not sure who is going to give us direction on our next move.
Yeah, we have a motion that reflects the option, the pathway 2. And I don't know how you want to handle it. However, typically, whoever presents the motion, typically.
So my understanding is that it would have to be presented as an amendment to the current motion, because we are still on a motion that has been seconded. Mr. Trevor?
If the person who made the motion and the person who seconded it would agree to adopt it, perhaps we could just do it as a friendly amendment.
Any discussion around that? You want to clear that up for us, Mr. Trevor?
So we did make a motion originally, so if the person who made the motion and the person who seconded it would just adopt it as a friendly, we could do it that way. Or we could withdraw the motion that's on the table.
And the motion that's on the table was made by Mr. Balfons and seconded by you. So you can either withdraw it or accept as a friendly amendment what you're about to read.
Okay. It doesn't matter. Just accept as a friendly amendment. So, if I recall correctly, I moved and Member Trevorrow seconded. So at this point, I'll withdraw that motion and move in accordance with what has been written and provided in Word docs. And I can read that if you want me to.
Please go ahead, Mr. Balfons.
So do we have to do any procedure for the withdrawal?
Well, my understanding, you've withdrawn it, so now you're going to propose a new motion, which will require a second afterwards.
Great. All right, and here's the motion. Consideration for action to expand access to public pre-K by 140 seats over 5 years through a combination of classrooms in Portland Public Schools and community partner classrooms with a demographic mix that is reflective of the district overall. In quotations, 55% students receiving free and reduced lunch and 45% students not receiving free and reduced lunch, in parentheses, period. Then 5 classrooms will be staffed with Portland Public Schools teachers and education technicians and will be located in Portland Public Schools buildings. 4 classrooms will be staffed with community partner teachers and education technicians and located in community partner sites. Before and after care will be offered. Transportation is not included. Expansion would occur incrementally over the 5 years with a plan to open 2 classrooms per year for 4 years and 1 classroom in the last year. The program will be coordinated by a Portland Public Schools pre-K coordinator. Special education services will be coordinated through CDS. English language learner supports will be provided by the language development team in the Portland Public Schools. And the existing classrooms would remain the same, parentheses, staffing and location, and parentheses, as they are in 2019.
Is there a second? Ms. Trevorrow? Are there any board questions on the motion? I have one quick question, just to clarify, because that was a very long motion. In essence, your motion is a clear description, an inclusive description of what the option 2 pathway had in its details. Is that an accurate interpretation of the motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Balfons. Any other board questions? Mr. Atkinson.
I guess one of I think the line read, and I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but I heard transportation is not included. And that to me sounds like we're intending not to include transportation as a strategic direction, and not necessarily that we haven't fleshed out and fully considered what the transportation option that we're, so I think there may be a little bit of wordsmithing on that particular line for me to get behind it.
Ms. Davis, please.
I've taken that motion and made a number of changes, so many that I think it would be very difficult to friendly, to amend it all the way through. One of the issues that I've addressed is the transportation one. I've also addressed the universal pre-K and the staffing configuration. So I can share this back up to Google Docs and people can look at it, or it could get printed, but it would be difficult, and this is why we tend not to do this on the fly. It would be difficult for me to just read it through for you. I mean, I can do that, but I think that is hard then for people to understand. So how would you like me to share it with you? Because I would offer it essentially as an amendment to what's in front of us, in whole,
Put it up on the screen?
Sure. Okay.
I think I'll put it up on the screen. I think just quick listening to the things you mentioned are all the amendments based on what did come out of committee. So I think this this is truly committee.
Yep.
And then everything you said has been discussed, but would be new from their recommendation.
Yes, exactly. I think I tried to incorporate the conversations that I've had with individual board members and that we had in our workshop and that we've heard tonight to perhaps at least get us a little closer to where I think the board may be. I could be wrong, but it's a step. So should I email it to you, Malia? Is that the best way?
I'm pretty good at this live.
You don't want to live do this.
No, what?
No, I've got a good red line version. Let me email it to you.
Oh, I gotcha. Do you want me to put, yes, please email it to me, and then do you want me to put this up?
I think,
I thought you said yes, but.
no, I meant that because nobody has access to Ms. Davis's amendments, and whereas the motion that Mr. Balfons read reflects in detail what option 2 was. So there's at least a level of understanding of it. So I think that if you can get from Ms. Davis what she wrote, we can put that up on the screen. I think she's emailing it to you.
Yeah, I'm emailing it to you.
Ms. Victor?
Could I raise one issue, perhaps that Ms. Davis, I don't want to imply anything, but that could be part of an amendment, and just one issue that we haven't discussed yet, which is in the now motion before us, we specify 5 classrooms in Portland Public Schools and 4 classrooms in partner organizations. However, we have the ability to create additional pre-K classrooms at Reiki and Przemysl when we do the renovations of those schools. Those plans aren't currently in place. As we know, we have some we have plans as part of the Buildings for the Future project that were put together more than 5 years ago now, when ramping up pre-K was not as high a priority, although, as the mayor alluded to, it was certainly on the table. But I do think if as a board we wanted to create potential classrooms there, we could. So I'm not sure if we should necessarily commit to a certain number of classrooms in our schools and at partner organizations, but rather a strategy where we maximize placements within our schools, within our elementary schools, and then look to create other classrooms at partner organizations where we don't have that capacity. So again, I'm just, and Ms. Davis, I didn't mean to imply that that would be something that you would incorporate, but just wanted to raise it as an issue.
If you want, Malia, I'll redo it because I've just added a phrase that I think covers what you're talking about, which says locating community partner sites or other sites as appropriate or available. Because, we could explore ourselves, building additional sites, or other sites might come available. We might be able to have them in our own schools that we could, if we're going in this direction, we could begin to look without the blinders on that we've had about how we were going to do this for what we might have for other available space. And that phrase gives you that.
Terrific. Thank you.
Send that back to
Your
me.
microphone was off.
Davis.
No.
Ms. Davis? Your microphone was off.
Oh, sorry. My microphone's on. It just wasn't in front of me.
So are we going to put up? We're going to project the amendment. All right.
Should still be on.
Okay.
Sent you the version with that additional phrase added to sort of give flexibility to the board and the district to find sites in partner, community partners or elsewhere, or to develop sites. In higher ed, we often work, rarely do we build dormitories ourselves anymore. Yep, I've sent it. Oops, oh, there it goes. We don't build dormitories, we partner with developers who build dormitories and we house our students in them. So it's possible that that's an option for pre-K as well, I don't know. But until we look, we don't know what might be possible.
Sorry, I haven't received it. I sent myself a test email. It came right through. Is it out of your outbox? And I got your earlier one. Oh, here we go. This will show up red in a second.
Can I ask a question about this?
Give me just 1 second.
Let me just finish. Sorry, I was trying to.
While you guys continue, Ms. Davis, if I'm understanding correctly, this is what you're proposing as a motion for amendment. It still needs a second. Is there a second to the amendment? Ms. Figdor? Any board questions on the amendments? Are you guys still reading? I couldn't do the neck thing. Ms. Figdor?
We had talked about for this first year of the program to provide families Metro vouchers as an interim step towards providing some transportation. I would like to see that in this proposal. While it's not sufficient, we know, and having the commitment to figure out transportation for next year, for the following year, I think is the right way to go, but I would like to see an interim step that could, we know isn't a complete solution, but could help some families in the meantime.
So right now we're in the question part of the amendment. If we wanted to change, if we wanted to amend the amendment, we'd just kind of go into that, rabbit hole. So that's fine if that's the way that we want to do, but I want to make sure that we follow the same process. So we are right now still on questions of the amendments. Ms. Atkinson?
I wonder, excuse me. I wonder if we might go through, because there are several proposals in this amendment, and I wonder if we might go through them one by one and make sure that we all fully understand what each of those things are. So there's a sliding scale, transportation, the proposition that would be staffed, that the partner site locations would be staffed by Portland teachers and ed techs. That was not a comprehensive look, but I'm just pointing out that there are several proposals that are not the committee proposals in here that I think we may want to at least look at individually, if not tease apart into separate motions.
I'm fine if that's what we want to do. Let's pick one and ask a question about it.
Okay.
I don't care what order we go, but I just want us to get to the gist of it. I still feel like we're closer to agreeing than we're not.
Yeah, we're somewhere in that process, it's hard.
So bullet point number 2 then, let's look at that one. That is essentially the PEA proposal.
This is what you're looking at.
Yep, yeah.
Yep. The intent here is that, because the 5 and the 4 are the so-called expansion classrooms, that this is just making clear that both the Portland Publics, the ones in the schools, that's clear, but that the ones that were at partner community sites would also be Portland Public School teachers and ed techs, whether they were located there or other sites as appropriate and available. So it's saying all of them are going to be, and this was talking about the future-focused ones. When you get farther down...
Want me to go down?
Yeah. To the existing classrooms where the one said that nothing was going to change, this is saying, yes, it is going to change, and that they would become Portland Public Schools employees. I didn't get into this, and there's some real specificity of, like, do they qualify as our employees? Would we hire them? All that kind of stuff, and that's one of the problems here, but it would give the intent that I think I was trying to make clear that all employees in this program would be Portland Public Schools employees. We haven't had a cost on that, which was part of the reason I didn't put in the bus passes, although I would put that in, is that we don't have costs for either the bus passes or this. And so I don't know what the budget implications are for that. And then the third one, the last one, which is totally new, was trying to avoid this getting locked into something that someone will sit here, years in the future and say, but you said you were going to do exactly this. But to say that it is our intent to engage in a robust ongoing evaluation process that is looking at whether or not this actually gets us. I think we're doing this more, but sort of really having the board say it clearly that we're going to look at whether this moves us closer to where we want to be. Is it satisfying the needs? Is it not satisfying the needs? And at all times that we are trying to get to universal as soon as possible and as practicable. And we're going to have to learn and do some market research about what that would mean. But this was trying to sort of address Ms. Figdor's concern about getting to universal pre-K, where everybody who wants a slot in Portland Public Schools, wants a seat, can have one.
Before we get to the next bullet point, I think Alicia had some information on transportation.
Can I just, no, it's not on transportation, it's on the cost. Sorry. If we were to staff with our employees. The cost would be the same for years 1 and 2, as those are designed to be our employees in those buildings. The only difference thereafter would be the difference in staffing before and after for years 3, 4, and 5.
It wouldn't be, because the existing ones who are paid, unless I'm not understanding how that's working with the community partners,
okay,
those teachers would come over. And even if it sounded reading through some of the materials, though there's sort of some reimbursements and billings and stuff going back and forth, but the compensation and the total compensation packages are different. So that cost, I don't know. It's
so my revised answer, would it cost more than
yes.
option 1?
And it would cost roughly $50,000 more per classroom, if I recall correctly, based on the what our classroom estimates were versus what the current funding is for the classrooms.
Our current classroom estimates are about 125,000, and we pay about 50 to 60 right now, so it would double.
So it's not 50, it's more like 60.
Ms. Atkinson?
Can I ask, sticking with the second to last bullet here, there's some pretty strong language in there about that things would be transitioned or relocated if a site's not interested in partnering. I'm wondering, Superintendent, if that raises any red flags. I think relocating a classroom at the beginning of next school year seems like an additional strain when we're already creating two. Okay, so there are two.
The PAS class
is.
It would be two classrooms that, the worst case scenario is that the two classrooms that are not located in the Portland Public Schools building, those partners would decline to participate in this model. And so trying to, preserve the same number of classrooms and not, add two but lose two. But the PAS one, it's our school building, so that one's not a problem. Our greatest risk would be that we might have to find room for 4 classrooms next fall rather than 2.
And also be onboarding a coordinator and I feel like it's already a big move, and we've been cautioned to not make it bigger, and this strikes me as something that could, in fact, have that effect.
And I would also add to that this is a very significant departure from what we have discussed to date, and these are valued partners that we've been working with, as you heard, for for a long time now. And so to unilaterally say it's our way or the highway, I think is not in keeping with the spirit of that partnership. And so I would caution us to make sure that we engage with them around the viability of this option, because I think we all understand it today from our vantage point, but we don't understand it from their vantage point. And I think that until we do, we should, and that has a hard line of, it shall or else, we move. And so I do worry about that.
Ms. Davis?
By no means is that meant as a my way or the highway kind of statement.
Those were my words, not yours.
I know. But I didn't want anyone to assume that was the spirit in which this is offered. My concerns are really that if we are going to have a Portland Public Schools pre-K program, that going forward, we need to be clear about what that program is. And I recognize and I would hope that our community partners would want to participate with us. I realize that it will put in their workplaces the same sort of problem that we would have if we kept our teachers or, we kept going forward with this. And I fully understand and fully support the concerns that were raised about the fact that the community does not respect or adequately compensate early childhood care. I'm just saying that for me, I can't continue to do that, and that at some point there is a line in the sand for me, and I can't perpetuate what I feel has been for decades a wrong. That is, and it's not about the hard work, it's not about the caring at all. That's not the issue. It's about if we're going to run the program, we have a responsibility to adequately compensate the employees who are teaching our children. So if we're going to get reimbursement from the state for these children, then they are our children in our program. Now, if the classroom wants to stay at the community site and not be a partnership with us, that's fine. But if it's going to be Portland Public Schools pre-K classroom, then I think we have a responsibility to adequately compensate those teachers on par with the other teachers in the district. And that's not about not wanting to partner or any of the other things. It's about saying there comes a point where, as a board, we need to be clear about what our values are. And for me, it does come across as a bright line, because I think at some point you got to draw it and you got to move forward. And this is, to me, that point. I don't see this so much as an expansion, as really a new redirection for pre-K, that we're headed in a bigger and better and different direction around pre-K, and that we are going to send a message to the community that we value the education of our youngest children. And we're going to start with the 4-year-olds. So.
Ms. Victor, do you mind scrolling back up to the top of the motion, of the amendment? Ms. Victor. Just the first, so we can get the first bullets. There you go. Ms. Victor.
From my perspective, this is, in fact, a new direction, only in that we're working to ensure that our program meets quality benchmarks that research shows will enable us to deliver high-quality pre-K. But this pace is not a new direction. So if we hadn't pressed pause, we would, by 2024, create 7 new pre-K classrooms. With this proposal, we'll have a total of 9. So this is just 2 additional classrooms from what the trajectory that we've been on since 2010. So I can't support this amendment. I would, just to articulate where I'm going, which is I would support these details, but specifying that we are creating 2 new classrooms in the first year, working towards full universal pre-K within 5 years, and doing so as expeditiously as possible. So just to...
Highlighting the bullet.
Yeah.
Yep. So I know that's not a question, but, so I apologize, that is not a question.
I think we've been loose about most things tonight. We're
fairly loose.
Yeah. All right. So again, to remind us, there's an amendment on the floor. We would now open the amendment to public comment, and then after that, during board discussion, perhaps we can continue to work on it. Does that seem like the right path? I see a lot of tired faces out there. Yeah. All right. I want to, so before we move on, and I want to address the tired faces out there. I recognize that it's late. I do. I know that we're tired. I've been up since really early. I want us to think about who we're doing this for. And I want us to think about the hardship that some of these students that we're trying to save go through, and that us being here late is a small sacrifice that I think a lot of us willingly walked into this room to make tonight. So having said that, if there's anybody that'd like to address the board, open up to public comment.
Do I need to say my name and stuff
If you
again?
don't
Sasha Shunk, 70 Frost Street in Portland. Especially if you're thinking about trying to do the aggressive expansion. And I can totally appreciate the idea of having the staff be all public school. Again, I want to be able to be considered to have pre-K students. I am a level 4. I am nationally accredited. I'm starting my master's program in the summer. I know other family child care providers in Portland who have master's degrees. I could talk all about why they're not a level 4, because there wasn't funding because of what our previous governor has cut. So I know that they can get to that point, and I know there'll be interest in that. I don't really know how that model would work for me to become a Portland Public School employee. So if you're looking at language, maybe not making it a definitive, maybe making it an option, an idea that there could still be a way for someone not to be a Portland Public School, or that the amount of money I would receive would reflect a benefit package, but that doesn't have to make me a Portland Public School employee, or I'm a part-time employee, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't necessarily want very definitive language that would then absolutely exclude me because I am myself a private business owner and not a teacher in a center-based program.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the amendment?
I'll be brief. Camelia Babson-Haley, 10 Beale Street, Portland, Youth and Family Outreach. Thank you, Ms. Davis. I heard that. I really appreciate the eye on equity. I do. However, I'm concerned about the language as it is right now, and if I could just encourage a little more flexibility in the language for conversation moving forward, because this is a transitional year. It's really exciting, all the work that you're putting so much work into this. In the 6 years that I've been doing this, this is the most work I've seen the school board put into this, like continuous, really deep work. So it's incredible. But I think it does need a little time and flexibility to see how this is all going to work out in this first year at least. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Ms. Moroni, you had something? Your microphone, if you don't mind.
I appreciated Ms. Davis's version. There's some of it I can support and some of it I can't. I think the parts that I can't is I have no real clear financial implications around some of this. And that's where we really dug in. And Alicia was amazing and her staff in our workshop, on our curriculum committee, we really dug in a lot on costs. Because right now, even where we are, first year out, adding 2 classrooms, that cost is already going to be really hard to meet. So I know we want and I kind of see it in different levels of wants, the wishes, and the perfect scenario. And I hesitate us right now. We may leave here either postponing this vote or right now I would not be voting in favor of this. So I don't want to do that. What I came here to do tonight is support pre-K, moving it forward, stop the pause button, and let's get the show on the road. And we need to do that in 2 ways. We need to get it ready for budget, and we need to get it ready for staffing in the fall. I definitely support and agree that it's not fair. The equity piece around all of it is of great concern to me with staffing. However, we've been doing that now since we started pre-K with these partners, and not to say that it's good to continue a bad thing, but what I want to caution is I don't want to end this because I feel like a little bit I can't support it without financial numbers behind it right now. That wouldn't be fair either. So I would love to be more broader language, general language, and have staff come back to us with dollar amounts for years 2, 3, 4, 5 type of thing around adding the staff more equitable. And I don't necessarily want to necessarily call them then Portland Public Schools staff, because I think, again, in our workshop or committee, we talked about how these partners of ours could potentially become more equitable with pay and benefits potentially if, so I don't know. I'm like I said, some of it I can support and some not. Thanks.
Ms. Bondo.
I totally agree with Ms. Moroni, and I think the language can be simple. The way we heard some of the community partners just open up the door, and I think we need to maybe take that one in consideration, that side. having the first, because we know the first and the second year is going to be like our pathway one, and just keep going with the conversation with our community partner, how they can try to recognize the value behind that culture for those teachers. So we need to be able to recognize that. So it's going to be a simple language in that bullet to try just to say, okay, this is not going to happen right now, but we take in consideration. And for a clear conversation, then this is what the board as a movement, and then that's a consideration. Then community members with the community provider can take in consideration for the 2 years in coming up, and then we can see also the budget behind those. I mean those numbers behind what's going to happen for the third and the fourth year and the fifth year. Yeah.
In an effort to try to get a little bit more action in our work right now, if there is a bullet or anything in the amendment that we're considering right now, I'd encourage someone to either amend it, as to strike it, whatever. Let's get the actual language done and move it forward. Ms. Victor.
Okay. So, with the goal of creating a truly universal pre-K program in Portland that aligns our Portland Promise goals with our ability to act as quickly as possible to increase the number of children that can access high-quality pre-K. We know, again, from the data from Starting Strong and the Data Innovation Project that only 27% of our pre-K programs in Portland are high quality, and high-quality programs are the ones that deliver results in terms of enabling kids to reduce enabling us to reduce the achievement gap and enabling all kids to start kindergarten on equal footing and with equal opportunity to succeed. So I'm going to propose to make this a truly universal program within 5 years. In Ms. Davis's proposal, in the final bullet, we could take out, I'm proposing to take out as soon as possible and to insert by 2024.
Comment on this?
Before we do that, is that your motion to amend the amendment by striking the last words?
I'm not finished yet.
Okay.
I'm just going to make note of this as a comment. Is that okay for you guys to track it?
Yeah, I think so.
So say that one more time.
So to strike as soon as possible and to add by 2024. And then I have to change a couple of bullets up top.
Ms. Victor, if you don't mind, just so that, again, for clarity, if we can do one by one. So can we get this one? Because unless you think there's another one that's like directly attached
in order to make this a universal program, I have to tweak some other bullets that specify that we're just creating 9 classrooms.
Go ahead, point at it.
So, yeah. So perhaps this, because there's another bullet down below as well, so perhaps the easiest way to do this is to provide a new version of Ms. Davis's proposal. So I don't know if you could put that Ms. Davis's proposal back in the initial Google Doc, and I could work on it from there, and then share it with folks. But the intention is just to make the changes needed to make this a truly universal program available to all families who are interested in it by 2024. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. Oh, there you go. Ah, Ms. Davis. that's the kind of assistance I needed. So Ms. Davis is just saying, if we just take a vote on the amendment and vote it down, then we would be back on the original motion, which was the one that we're trying to amend, and then you can offer the amendment, which would be
This one is on the floor.
the correct thing, yeah. So we would have to vote this one, and if it does not pass, then we'd get the, does that make sense? The opportunity to amend it.
I guess if
Ms.
there
Davis,
were,
go ahead. You want to?
if there were smaller specific things that people kind of wanted to tweak in this, that makes sense. But otherwise, if you've got a whole nother, sort of a different one that's that different, I wonder whether it might be better to vote this up or down, and then bring yours to be voted up or down.
I think the process
than to
would
keep
be
tweaking it. This is the problems with doing this.
I think the process would be to vote on my amendment to Ms. Davis's amendment first. And it is, I mean, it's just tweaking what she's done. It's just, I just need to tweak it in several places. Is that,
But you
Mr.
have to
Varro,
offer
perhaps?
it first.
It would have to be seconded.
You would have to offer it and have it seconded.
Great, so I am making that motion.
Have you articulated what it is?
Yes.
I'm not sure I know what it is.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
I think you take the two where it says 5 and 4, and you go, all classrooms will be staffed by Portland Public Schools teachers and technicians and will be located in Portland Public Schools buildings or in community partner sites as appropriate and available. And you sort of, without talking about the number of classrooms, because it's essentially saying we're going to keep going until there aren't any more students who want care, and whether that's 9, 10, 12, 16, 18, we almost don't know, because there will be parents who choose to not participate in this for a variety of reasons, that whatever, this program doesn't meet their needs as it grows and develops.
That works. In addition, we need to change the first sentence of the motion to say consideration and action to create a universal public pre-K program over the next 5 years. Thank you, Ms. Davis.
So are we all pretty clear in Ms. Figdor's motion? We'd need a second for us to dive into that one. Seconded by Mr. Atkinson. Ms. Figdor, do you mind just briefly sort of kind of summarize what changed from the original amendment that Ms. Davis had on the floor?
Yes, the only thing that changed is the scope of the program. So instead of creating 140 new seats, we will create enough seats to enable every child in every 4-year-old in Portland who wants to attend high-quality pre-K program to do so. States and cities around the country have for decades been moving to universal pre-K programs. We are about 10 years behind the rest of the state in just having 22% of our kids enrolled in, 4-year-olds enrolled in public pre-K. And as you heard from the mayor's reading of a 2010 Portland Press Herald article, we have been talking about this for many years. So we know the research is very clear that universal pre-K reaches the most children, has the biggest impact on the at-risk kids, and also is beneficial to middle-class kids. And I believe that the way to go right now, today, the decision that we should be making rather than putting it off once again, after this deep dive and some really terrific work by our district staff and Starting Strong, the Data Innovation Project, that we should take the opportunity today to commit to a full universal program, pre-K program in Portland.
Excellent. And again, to clarify, we would be amending the amendment, so this wouldn't be necessarily moving it forward at this point in the meeting. Having said that, any other questions on the amendment to the amendment? Ms. Trebro?
Just wondering if we could get a staff opinion of the amendment.
Well, I've had this conversation with Ms. Figdor, so I am not, I'm not opposed to universal pre-K. I also believe that we need to think about 3-year-old pre-K. I think we need to continue to understand that this is an ecosystem. It is not a single provider's ability to offer childcare from birth to the time that they go to kindergarten, and that this is not what we propose. This is not something that we fully understand, and and at the end of the day, it is not something that we have a clear understanding of how it's going to be funded. So I'm super concerned that we're biting off more than what we have the knowledge or the resources to fully support. So I think, we run the risk of having the article that, the mayor in 2027 comes and reads to the then sitting board and superintendent and reminds them that, we've been down this path. And sorry, Mayor, I don't know if you'll be around in 2027, but if you are, then you can come and read that article.
Ms. Victor?
If I may respond, we have created a process for a commission to come together to figure out a dedicated local funding source. I don't think that we right now are, for the costs of 140 seats, have plans or ability to include that full cost in our existing budget. So the question right now is, what is the program that we think children in Portland deserve and need in order to reduce achievement gaps, reduce our substantial achievement gap, and enable all kids to be successful in school and later life. High-quality pre-K is so powerful. It can be a game changer for children and for schools and for communities. And this is our opportunity to make it a reality in Portland. The funding discussion is very real, and we need to get to it. But we should create the program, again, that our students need, have the subsequent conversation about what a dedicated local funding source could look like. Ultimately, if we were not able to raise that money, then we can come back and scale back the program if needed. We also know that universal pre-K is a priority of the governor, that there are several different legislative vehicles, including vehicles that create a minimum of 50% of the cost would go to each district, meaning that we would get more than our 16% through the EPS. So the funding conversation has not even begun, so I don't think that it should limit our willingness to create a program that responds to the need.
And the funding was one of several concerns that I cited when I was asked for my opinion.
Any other questions? So we are at getting public comment on the amendment. Any public comment on the amendment on the floor? Seeing none, any further board discussion on the amendment to the amendment? For what year is it from, though? Any further board discussion on the amendment? If not, well, okay, Ms. Moran.
So I just want to make it extremely clear, back in 2010, when I worked on the resolution that I I've always been a huge supporter of universal pre-K, and I like the fact that Ms. Davis did add it in as a reminder again, but we have a resolution that we've already voted on that says universal pre-K. I don't think we're just getting rid of that idea at all, and I appreciate you wanting to go faster, but my concern is the finances around it, and without having a better, clear path and understanding that, as well as staff support saying they've looked at all of that, at this point, I can't support it. Thank you.
Ms. Davis?
I also really appreciate the spirit in which this is offered, and I would like to be able to go there. But I think that we need to remember that pre-K is one strategy for reducing the achievement gap. And we heard a lot about some of our other strategies that we're bringing in, and I guess I hope that the 140 seats, I mean, I could add to it at least 140 seats, sort of say we're hoping that maybe it's going to be more than that. But at this point, I would rather not raise the expectations to dash them. If we can't fund it, I would rather set an expectation that we truly intend to meet, and then be able to say, you know what, we've got extra funding and we're going to 200 seats. We're going to 250. We're going to get there sooner and quicker than we thought we were, as opposed to setting a community expectation that we then aren't able to meet, or we have to gut other programs that, services to, I'm thinking back to the 18% of our high school students who test as being proficient in math. And while this is important, it's not the only thing we need to do. So if I knew we had the money, I'd be there. But I don't know that we do, and I'd rather sort of set an expectation we can meet and then hopefully exceed it than set an expectation I'm not sure we can meet and fall short, as well-intentioned as that is. So I could not vote for it tonight.
If there's no other discussion, we'll take a vote on the amendment to the amendment, and then we'll see where that takes us. So I don't think I'm going to read it, but all those in favor? Excuse me.
Sorry, verbiage to replace.
Yeah, I do. It's just hard for me.
Do you want me to read it for you?
If you don't mind, I'll prep it. So all those in favor of approving the amendment on the floor?
So I'm just going to read consideration and action to expand access to create a universal public pre-K program over the next 5 years.
So all those in favor, please indicate. All those opposed? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Where the 4? I don't think that's ever happened before.
What happens in the 4-4? Motion fails.
Okay, I'm sorry. So a motion fails on a 4-4 vote. I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying, because you saw the deer eyes. So we're back to the original amendment that Ms. Davis put on the floor, which is what we have up here. Is there any further board discussion on that amendment? Mr. Varro, and then Mr. Atkinson.
So I'm conflicted because I want to support it, but I don't feel ready to support it at this moment. And it's just the part around the partners becoming public school teachers. And, I walked in here tonight thinking that was something I could support for all the reasons that were outlined by Ms. Davis and why she put the amendment forward in the first place, pay equity and all that. But I'm concerned from the comments that the superintendent made earlier about including our community partners and the impact of that, as well as some of the testimony that we heard tonight, that I just don't feel it's fleshed out enough at this point in time for me to be able to support it.
Mr. Atkinson?
So I share Mr. Navarro's concern, and that was what I wanted to raise as well. I think striking that bullet, the existing classrooms, I'd like to make a motion to strike that bullet from the motion.
Is there a second? Ms. Morioni? I think it's pretty clear what the amendment is, unless anybody needs him to repeat it. Ms. Davis, you have questions?
Oh, no, for comment.
I was just saying that if we were fine with him not repeating it, we'll go right into board questions. Ms. Figdor?
Would the intention be, without this bullet, to enter into conversations with those 3 organizations and, to the extent practicable, to transition to Portland Public School staff? Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and can I just comment on that? So I think, you know, and I'm not exactly sure where that is, but the intent of, I think, Ms. Davis's suggestion is that all classrooms move towards that. I think it's the timing of of that, you know, the requirement and the timing of that is problematic. I think it's clear, and I would want that to be, you know, the board's understanding that it's for us to continue to work in that direction, but not, you know, by next year, and not without without discussion with our partners.
Excellent. So any other questions on the amendment to strike that bullet point? If not, we'll take public comment on the amendment to strike that bullet point.
Can I just clarify for you, are you striking the amended bullet or the complete bullet?
Mr. Atkinson, you want to clarify that for us?
I was proposing to strike the entire bullet, and maybe after hearing the questions, maybe that's not quite right. Maybe we need to have something there. Yeah. Yeah, I think So
you would have to withdraw your amendment and then maybe propose a different one.
Okay. Okay, so I'll withdraw the amendment as long as, I don't know who seconded it, but yeah, is that? I'm going to withdraw it, and then I'm going to remake it.
I think what you want to do is...
Can I ask a clarifying question before you do that?
Mm-hmm.
If we kept the amendment and struck the whole bullet point, then we would essentially be silent on this issue, which I think would allow us flexibility procedure-wise to make some determinations on this issue. Whereas specifying that the existing classrooms remain as contracted classrooms would hold us to that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think if you wanted to amend it again, that it would be better to not be silent on it, because that, to me, undercuts the intent. I'd probably find myself in the position of not voting for my own amendment, which is possible anyway, but that we could change it so that the wording is that they will be transitioned as soon as possible, that there's some way. This is going to be disruptive no matter what. And, you know, the timing was chosen because it's consistent with the budget year, it's consistent with an academic year, you're not changing people's compensation in the middle of a year. I'm not sure how those teachers might feel knowing that if they were working for us, they would be making X while they're still working for Y for another year while their employer talks to us, when the goal is for them to be employed by us. So I'm thinking of it in terms of, and I think that's a very difficult situation for the community partners to manage. So I guess I'm saying that I think that we could actually negotiate this clearly, and it may or may not work for community partners. I fully understand that. But I think from the employee and the program perspective, to not just get it done actually is going to undercut the quality of the program and just stretch out something that will be disruptive no matter what. It'll be disruptive if it happens September 1st of this year. It'll be disruptive if it happens September 1st of next year, because what we're signaling is our clear intent that it happen. And I'm not sure that time really makes that better or worse here, but that's my feeling about this. And I think we actually have adequate time to negotiate that. It's the beginning of March.
Ms. Atkinson?
So I've got some language here, so I'd like to try again with my motion. Okay, great. So existing classrooms would remain the same in 2019. The Board of Education directs staff to engage with community partners to develop a plan to transition teachers and ed techs in community partner programs to Portland Public Schools.
I did not.
Sorry, I didn't go slow.
The Board of Education directs staff to
engage
with partners.
Yep, to develop a plan to transition teachers and ed techs to Portland Public Schools. I think maybe that last part is not quite right, but yeah.
Is there a second on the motion? There's no second. Okay. So the motion does not have a second. We're back to the original amendment with the questionable bullet point. No, because we've been at it. So I think, so I get the sense that this particular issue is where we hung up. But let's just kind of, for 1 second, is there anything else in this amendment that needs to be addressed? If not, then we're just going to put it to a vote right now as is amended. Ms. Begdor?
I have three additional proposed changes.
Pardon me?
Them?
Yeah, just throw them. You don't need to ask permission.
Okay. In the first bullet, I would add at the beginning of the bullet at least 5 classrooms. So that is recognizing that we might be able to create additional capacity for classrooms at Reiki and Przemysl when we renovate those classrooms, so those school buildings. The second change would be to delete the first sentence under transportation and to change it to transportation vouchers will be provided to students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Sorry, it should be Metro vouchers. And we do have a initial cost estimate on that from Alicia that was circulated during the workshop process.
Yep.
I believe the cost of that was
17,000.
Yeah,
17.
50,000.
Less than 20,000.
Less than $20,000.
And that was assuming that everybody used them.
So that wasn't just for families for students that qualify for free and reduced lunch.
That's right.
And the third change would be to delete the last, in the very last bullet, to delete as soon as possible, and to add a process for coming back and figuring out how to make this a truly universal program. So to change it to in advance of budget development for fiscal year 2020. I'm sorry, fiscal year 2022. So again, on this last point, let's be specific about, we keep articulating an intention to get to universal. This puts in place a pre-K coordinator who will live and breathe our pre-K program, who will start to pursue options to expand to additional partners to meet the additional classrooms that we're articulating in this proposal, and that would give us time to come back and think about transitioning this to a universal program.
So just to clarify, the at least 5 classrooms leaves that door open. The Metro vouchers deals with transportation, and the last piece gives us the plan moving forward with a little bit more of a definitive timeline with the 2022 date. So is there a second to that amendment? Ms. Bondo? I think you did a fine job explaining it. So is there any board questions on the amendments? Ms. Morioni?
Is that bullet that's in red staying there? The one about the existing classroom bullet still there? In Ms. Victor's? Okay.
Under this amendment, I believe so.
Okay.
If I can just real quick, because I think that what you just proposed, Ms. Victor, might be something that gets us back to the original amendment from Ms. Davis, that then we can maybe, if that particular bullet point then needs to be, because I think this moves us a lot closer to where we need to be. So
I just was confused if that was still there since it was in red and everything.
I believe under this amendment that stays the same, but then that will get us back to Ms. Davis' amendment, which wouldn't, yeah.
Okay.
No, Ms. Morini, I'm so sorry. I really don't want to leave you without you understanding.
No, I just, Ms. Vigdors has that bullet left in. Okay, I cannot support that bullet, so that's why I was just asking.
We wouldn't be
Going back,
passing it
yeah.
forward. So
Okay, thanks.
we're just going to be voting on the amendments on those 3 different changes. So this wouldn't be pushing that bullet point forward. What we would vote first is on the amendment to include at least 5 classrooms, Metro vouchers, and the 2021 date. Yeah, we're only 2 holes deep right now.
We're amending the amendment.
Correct.
Ms. Vigdor has amended my amendment. It didn't address that particular bullet, but when we next vote, we're not voting on that bullet.
Correct.
So you could vote in favor of Ms. Vigdor's amendment, but then vote against it because of that bullet at the next vote, when you actually vote on the motion, the amendment as amended, if Ms. Vigdor's amendments pass.
Thank you. Mr. Rowe?
I was just wondering if we could get a reminder of what the Metro cost estimate was, and perhaps if staff might be able to address. I'm sorry to put you on the spot again, but
I was putting you in the spot.
It's in the
I know.
questions document.
It's in there somewhere, but
I can, if you have it, I can find it.
Page 3, we contacted Metro, does not charge for children 5 and under, bus pass for parents, estimating a 50% usage. The cost for full school year would be $15,000 to $20,000. Adult has to travel with the child. Schedules don't match the school schedules. Some schools might not be on a convenient route. So this is not assuming that, I think, and I'm not sure what it's a 50% usage by whom, but it's probably unlikely that even of the free and reduced lunch students, that all of them will take it. So you may have, whatever number you looked at, you may have assumed that 50% would, and it may have been 50% of the 140, I don't know.
No, it was 50% of the full.
Of the full.
200 plus students, yes.
So you'd probably be, my hunch is you would be safe.
Considerably below that, absolutely.
Yes, if you were just doing the free and reduced lunch students.
And we're not doing 240 slots at this point, so we're considerably below that.
Okay.
Queens. So any other questions on the amendment, to the amendment? I'm sorry, Ms. Nally?
Oh, would you like me to read them before?
Would that be helpful? If not, we'd get public comment and then discussion and vote on the amendment to the amendment. So, Ms. Victor?
Just noting, I don't see the first change in this document. In the first bullet, it should say, at least at the very beginning of the bullet. Oh, I see. Thank you.
I'm reflecting amendments as comments so that
Sorry.
you can decide and then I can resolve or add.
Got it. Thank you.
That's why I was wondering if you'd like me to read it as amended.
Thank you.
So we'll take public comment on the amendment to the amendment, again highlighting the 3 changes that are included in this amendment.
Hi, Sue Olison again. I just wanted to address Mr. Atkinson's amendment. We didn't get a chance to do that. I'm really concerned about putting in something that is going to inhibit the district from working with outside providers this year to be able to affect those existing outside provider employees. I think it would work a lot better if you had, took that first sentence out and put as soon as possible at the end, and that leaves it open. I just feel bad for those employees. Some of them had to leave already, who are going to feel that this is moving on and there's no opportunity for any negotiating to go on or some plan to be worked out between the district and the outside providers that could begin next year. Thank you.
We have not voted on it. Yeah, Ms. Bond voted. I'm sorry.
I think she said that she was concerned about.
We're trying to look back and see if the amendment did get a second. Ms. Bondo. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. His. I'm sorry, Mr. Botana. The superintendent was asking me about Mr. Atkinson's amendment because of the comment. So, any other public comment on the amendment on the floor? Seeing none. Any board discussion on it? Okay, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor of approving, Ms. Nally, if you don't mind this time. All those in favor of approving the amendment as read by Ms. Nally?
Okay, so for bullet 1, at least 5 classrooms will be staffed with Portland Public Schools teachers and education technicians and will be located in Portland Public Schools buildings. Second one, strike this first sentence and have it read add Metro vouchers will be provided to students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So I guess Portland Public Schools staff are directed to explore and bring a plan for providing transportation for pre-K students to the Board of Education in the fall of 2019 in advance of budget development. Metro vouchers will be provided to students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. No, sorry. Just replace it.
Yeah, so for this first year, we're going to provide Metro vouchers, and then we'd pursue a more comprehensive transportation plan that would be brought to the board in advance of next year's budget process.
Okay, so in the first year, Metro vouchers will be provided to students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And then it will continue as it's already written here. Portland Public Schools are dedicated to explore and bring a plan for providing transportation for pre-K students to the board in the fall of 2019 in advance of budget development. So it's a replacement of sentence 1. Okay. And then the final third amendment right now is on the final bullet. The Board of Education directs staff to design a robust ongoing evaluation process of the redesigned pre-K program described above that will explore the ability of Portland Public Schools to achieve truly universal pre-K in advance of budget development for fiscal year 2022.
All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3. Oh, look at that, unanimous with the students voting in favor. So we're back to the original. We're back to the original amendment that Ms. Davis put on the floor as amended. Is there any further board discussion? Mr. Balfons?
So I just want to make sure, Member Davis, you're proposing this amendment as a whole and not individual. You don't want to go through it in part, is that right?
Go right ahead. Go into the microphone here.
So like, I take the metro as well, and to go to school and come back. And honestly, it is like really, it's like a really complicated system. And like, once you miss the bus, it's like you've like already put yourself like an hour late or something like that. So like, I kind of feel as if like just even to get there in the morning, like that would be like the biggest struggle for any like 4-year-old and parents having to do with that, especially if we're like giving for like students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and that we all know that like majority of them are like ELL students. Like the majority of them like don't have like, you know, like it's like really tough, especially like during the winter. That's brutal as well. So I'm wondering like how is that going to pan out? Because I honestly don't feel comfortable voting on the motion, knowing that like a 4-year-old and their parents will be out in the cold waiting for a metro bus to get to their place of study.
Yes, and I fully hear where you're coming from. And this is just the idea for Metro vouchers is just to provide some kind of transportation in the first year, because otherwise we don't have a plan to offer transportation, which is not satisfactory. We do need to figure out a plan to provide, ideally to provide full transportation for 4-year-olds, but we don't have that plan now. And we have larger transportation issues in the district that we really have to address. It's part of the operations, it's one of the operation committee's priorities this year. And so as we're addressing those larger transportation challenges in the district, we can add this as one component. But I hear you, it's not satisfactory. And transportation, we know is a hurdle to families, and it will continue to be a hurdle until we're able to offer a better solution than Metro passes.
And I think it's just a way to give options to the parents who need it. I mean, we're not going to force everybody, because when I look at 2 elementary schools, the Reiki School and East End, when you look in that area, so if they can have access for opportunity instead to walk, so better get a metro bus, just carry on by foot with all those 4 years old and try to attend those schools. So that it's going to be options to offer to parents who really need it, so they can be able to try to transport those kids at school.
Great. If there's no other discussion, we'll put it to a vote. Ms. Nally, if you don't mind. All those in favor of approving the amendments? Sorry, I know I'm giving you that stare. As amended, I think, which is on...
And yes, and I can read this if you would like me to. To clarify, I've now resolved comments and accepted amendments, so this is the version that you're voting on, I believe. Would you like me to read it out loud?
If you don't mind,
Yes.
one
Okay.
last time.
Happy to. Okay, consideration and action to expand access to public pre-K by 140 seats over 5 years through a combination of classrooms in Portland Public Schools and community partner sites with a demographic mix that is reflective of the district overall, parentheses, 55% students receiving free and reduced lunch and 45% students not receiving free and reduced lunch. At least 5 classrooms will be staffed with Portland Public Schools teachers and education technicians and will be located in Portland Public Schools buildings. 4 classrooms will be staffed with Portland Public Schools teachers and education technicians and located in community partner sites or other sites as appropriate or available. Before and after care will be offered on a sliding scale to be developed and approved by the Board of Education. In the first year, Metro vouchers will be provided to students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. Portland Public Schools staff are directed to explore and bring a plan for providing transportation for pre-K students to the Board of Education in the fall of 2019 in advance of the budget development for fiscal year 21. I can edit that. Expansion would occur incrementally over 5 years with a plan to open 2 classrooms per year for 4 years and 1 classroom in the last year. The program will be coordinated by a Portland Public Schools pre-K coordinator. Special education services will be coordinated through CDS. English language learner supports will be provided by the language development team in Portland Public Schools. The existing classroom staffed by employees of community partners will be transitioned to be staffed by Portland Public Schools employees or relocated by the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year if a community partner site is not interested in participating. And the Board of Education directs staff to design a robust, ongoing evaluation process of the redesigned pre-K program described above that will explore the ability of Portland Public Schools to achieve truly universal pre-K in advance of budget development for fiscal year 2022.
Can I just raise a technical amendment?
Yes, Ms. Fiegler.
The second bullet, since we added at least 5 classrooms, the next bullet starts 4 classrooms. I think we'd need to say a maximum of 4 classrooms, or the remaining, it would probably be better to say the remaining classrooms will be staffed. Just,
Do you have to make that an amendment?
I think that's a technical amendment. Right now, we're saying at least 5 and then specifying 4. So those two things don't hold together. So
It would be to say the remaining instead of 4. in
the
bullet
remaining
2.
instead of 4, just to resolve that discrepancy.
Yes?
Oh,
Or Mr. Atkinson has suggested the additional classrooms, which I think works. Sorry for that oversight in my previous amendment.
so with the technical amendment in place, we'll bring it up to a vote. All those in favor of approving the amendment on the screen, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? So the motion passes 5-3 with 2 students voting with the majority. That was it, guys.
That was not it. That was Lori's amendment.
So that was... Okay, so we're...
Back to the main motion as amended.
Awesome. So now we're back to the main motion as amended, which is kind of redundant. Yeah.
I'm not here. I didn't bring my...
Yeah. So, Mr. Atkinson, go ahead.
Yeah, and that's, I want to look back at that second last bullet again, and see if there's anything we can do to...
So right now, we're back to the main motion, and that's what the motion looks like right now. So if you want to offer an amendment, amend the motion that's on the floor right now.
I wonder if everything after by, the relocated by the beginning of the school year, I wonder if we could get rid of by the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year and say as quickly as possible, just to give some more wiggle room there so that we can discuss and negotiate. So I would offer that as a motion, if I can get a second this time.
Is there a second? Ms. Morioni? Mr. Atkinson, if you don't mind, just very, very briefly, just really summarize the change and what it captures.
Sure. I'm a little troubled by the specifics and the tight timeline of by the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year, and would like to open up some space for dialogue and some time to react to that disinterest if it were expressed.
Is it the years that you're
Yes. Sorry, I didn't want to strike all of what's in yellow there. Just from by to the end of year. What's that word? Oh.
as quickly as possible?
Yes, or maybe as quickly as practicable.
Practicable?
Yeah, how's that?
Good. So Ms. Morioni, you seconded this motion. You're okay with the changes that Ms. Atkinson just worded?
Yeah, I was just consulting with my other colleagues. I think the concern is that it feels more like it's mandatory to work with them versus continuing a dialogue around the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I'm still concerned. Yeah.
Yeah. Ms. Davis, yeah.
I would just point out that we have 6 months between now and the beginning, and I think it's my belief that we're either going to be able to negotiate something in 6 months, because I envision negotiation happening to make it happen, and I suspect that we can get that done in 6 months. I'm a little concerned when we sort of take a deadline off of it, because it could potentially allow it to just keep sliding. And if we aren't going to be able to negotiate something in 6 months, my hunch is we're not going to be able to negotiate something. And so we probably ought to just part ways at that point. I don't think that's one where having another year or more time is necessarily going to yield a different outcome than we're going to find in 6 months. So I just wanted to point out to the board that we do have half a year before we'd be implementing.
Yes, Alicia.
Is the intent that this would essentially take the 3 partnership classrooms that we have now and essentially make them full cost classrooms? Okay. Okay. So the group is aware that's like $180,000 to $200,000 additional that was not in the projections that we had given you. Okay.
Ms. Trevor?
Are we at discussion, or are we still at questions, or?
I think we are in the discussion part because we had already moved through the questions, public comments, and it started discussion when the amendment started. So we're at the discussion piece.
So my reservation with the amendment, I guess my preference would be to see this paragraph amended so that it neither prohibited the partner organizations from becoming Portland Public Schools employees, nor mandated that they become so, but rather specified that the district engage in a conversation around that to flesh it out further. This still mandates that, they're going to be under the contract And I think that was a concern I heard tonight, whether or not that's something that everybody wants necessarily.
Yeah. Excuse me, if there is no other, I'm sorry, I want to press pause for a second. Mr. Atkinson.
I think if this amendment is up for discussion, I think we do need to take public comment on it.
Yeah, I was just...
Sorry, I didn't...
Checking what step we
Can
were
I
in.
retract my second on Mr. Atkinson's amendment? Because I'm realizing, well, he did amend it as, would not be something I'd vote in favor of. So, sorry, Tim.
That's fine. So we don't have a second right now on the amendment, on the motion. Is there anyone else to second the motion for the amendment? Ms. Victor? Good. And Mr. Atkinson, you're good with the way that that your amendment is being described here?
No, I think that some good points have been raised, and I would be willing to withdraw the amendment, but I still have concerns about this paragraph, but I think that, as was pointed out, my concerns are not addressed by my amendment, and I think, the late hour and the on-the-fly nature of this work is one of the excuses I can come up with right now for why that is.
It's a valid one. So if you guys can just check on me again, we are now back to voting on the motion, on the main motion, as has been amended. Mr. Balfins?
So at this point, I want to go back to what was mentioned earlier about moving to strike it entirely. I think that would give us the flexibility to do, I think, what we would like to do and talk to our partners and not just be it, our way or the highway. And so I'd move to amend to strike the whole paragraph.
Is there a second? Mr. Atkinson? I think it's pretty clear. We'll strike the whole bullet point, as that's what the amendment means. So any questions on it? Seeing none. Any public comment on the amendment on the floor?
I urge you not to strike this. I get all the comments around, we want to talk to people, we want to work it out. They've been partners with us, we like them and all of that. It's all important. But I agree with Ms. Davis that we've got 6 months. I think the district has already started talking to some of the partners. I don't see why we're not going to be able to work it out. And remember, this is going to lead to the same thing that I mentioned earlier from your 50-page report, which are those teachers, if that's not changed, they're going to be the first ones out going to the PPS positions, just like all of our other PPS teachers used to be working for outside providers. So if you don't do this, they're going to be starting to experience the shift right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, Camelia Babson-Haley, 10 Beale Street, Portland, Maine. Oh, geez, it is late, isn't it? It's hard to think right now. I thank you for putting this out there because I think it's perfect. We need flexibility. I'm concerned about the partnerships. I really am. And I'm a little confused by the all one way, that it has to be just one way. I don't understand why there can't be more conversation around different delivery models, including different ways to fund the classrooms, salaries and slots and all of that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Sasha Shunk, 70 Frost Street, Portland. Again, I just having the multiple delivery options, and this bullet points about existing classrooms. I want to be a new classroom, and I also want to look at the fact that I'm not going to go into the public school system with my degree. I want to stay home, and I know there are other providers who want to do the same thing, and I'm not really sure, again, how you can make us a Portland public school when we're working for ourselves. So just being able to have open-ended language and having two options available would be very beneficial.
Hello, Michelle Belanger, 18 Old Orchard Road, Old Orchard Beach. I was one of those second-class teachers that's been thrown around for 5 years. I taught the public pre-K classroom at Youth and Family Outreach for 5 years. I have moved into a different position. I have not jumped ship to go to a public school position. That is the fear that has been mentioned. But I also have been in early childhood for over 20 years. I have my master's degree. I have been doing the same pre-K program that I did a year before I started partnering with Portland Public Schools that I did the day after. It was a quality pre-K program. There's hundreds of pre-K teachers that are doing it all across the city without public school funding. So I feel that, yes, there is the paid disparity, absolutely, but I also feel that by not taking advantage of the experts in the field, of the early childhood and education field that you have at your fingertips, really is a disadvantage to this program. And I feel that by striking that bullet, you at least open the conversation to partnering with family child cares and having a different delivery model.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Any further board discussion on the amendments? Mr. Norris?
I can't vote on this or suggest a separate amendment, but I think that a lot of different board members have been proposing kind of semi-extreme options on this bullet point. Strike it entirely. I guess Tim's wasn't as extreme, but it kept the requirement that this has to happen. And then if we look at the end of as amendment, our motion right now, it leaves the entire motion really pretty open, right? Because it says we can robust ongoing evaluation process of the redesigned pre-K program described above that will explore the ability. So I think that kind of connotates that we will continue to be looking into this, and I think if we can put that open-ended language kind of in this motion, I don't understand why we can't put an open-ended thing, an open-ended language on this bullet point that just allows us to come back to this, have more dialogue with clearly a large amount of the public that has something to say on this bullet point. I think, why not, can we leave it open-ended and then come back to it?
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Any further discussion? Ms. Toro?
I could support it either way, if it was open-ended or if it was completely stricken. I think, just to reiterate, the intent of striking it is to leave it open. I think nothing in striking it precludes any discussions that are happening right now, or that could potentially happen regarding the more members under the Portland Public Schools banner from happening. And I think that the board tonight as a whole has pretty much expressed a sentiment of wanting to see pay equity. So I would expect that would be the direction that the staff would take it, but it would leave it open and flexible to have the dialogue with the community partners in the instance that wasn't something that they wanted.
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
Having written this, this is my first draft, and I rarely would put out my first draft to be seen, because oftentimes it's not written as artfully as it could be. But I think the intent here was to put the employee at the head in the first place, and envisioned negotiations starting immediately and over the next 6 weeks to accomplish what I think the board wants to have, which is the pay equity, and to not wait to do that. We don't want to wait to serve our students. I don't want to wait to bring pay equity to the teachers who are participating in our program and serving our students. And that's the difference here. If I could rewrite it, I probably could make it a little softer and more, a better wordsmith. But we're doing this on the fly, and so just trying to have clarity that this was one that for me, I am not willing to wait. I'm not willing to wait for our employees, just as I'm not really willing to wait very long for students. So hence, we've actually put some additional language in this that drives us to universality more quickly than originally envisioned. So this is to bring us to essentially the equity for our staff as well as our students. So I'm sorry if it comes across as being a little harsh. It was the first draft in the middle of the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any other board discussion? Seeing none, we'll bring the amendment to a vote. All those in favor of striking the bullet point and amending the motion, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 5. All those opposed? So the amendment passes with a 5-3 vote, and students voting with the majority. We're back to the main motion. And I think we were at the board discussion. We were at the board discussion of the main motion, which now does not include that last stricken bullet point. Help me out, where are we? I'm sorry, guys. So let's
discussion?
We're in discussion.
We're in discussion.
Let me, just because we are about to vote on an amended motion, let me put it back out there for public comment, and then we'll bring it back up to finally vote on it. So any public comment on the motion that we're at right now?
Sasha Shug, 70 Frost Street, Portland. So I think when you talk about the wage equity, I think that can be addressed immediately, and I don't think it necessarily needs to mean you have to become an employee. I think some of the when I went to the workshops and they talked about the pay per hour and whatnot, that seemed to address what that was going to look like, whether it was a community partner or not. Perhaps there were some healthcare issues, but they couldn't quite ever work out what that would be. So again, I think that can be addressed without mandating that you become a Portland Public School employee.
Thank you. Anyone else? No further public comments. We're back to finish up our discussion and then bring it to a vote. Is there any further board discussion? Ms. Davis?
Regrettably, I think this is a bright line for me, because this is not about just wages. This is about a total compensation package. And while younger people in the audience may not have thought as much about retirement, I certainly have. And I know what Portland Public Schools offers in terms of its benefit package. I have had it. And I know what it provides in terms of retirement benefits particularly. I know what it provides in terms of health. I looked at the materials presented otherwise. And just as we talk about students not being able to wait a year, not having access to compensation, a total compensation package that allows you to save for your retirement has long-term major financial implications for these staff. Asking them to wait a year to be compensated on par with the other teachers in this program is an unfair ask. And I'm sorry, but it's a really bright line for me. As much as I value pre-K and would like to see this move forward, without that, I can't, because we are not offering the same thing to the employees, ours and others, who teach our children, for whom we are going to be receiving reimbursement from the state. And we have set up within our own institution, our own organization, a two-tier for however long, because we haven't set any deadlines for us, ourselves, or the staff. And I firmly believe that 6 months is enough time for us to negotiate that with our partner organizations and resolve it one way or the other. So regrettably, I will be a no vote.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Oro?
So I will be supporting this tonight. I think what we have before us is a giant leap in the right direction. It'll be the most ambitious step that we've taken on pre-K in a decade. And I think that it doesn't bind us to things that are still unknown at this point in time, nor does it inhibit us from approaching those items. So I think that, you know, what we have before us is the best that we could craft this evening, and while it still has some work on it, I'm very excited to be moving pre-K forward this evening.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Ms. Moriarty?
Having worked on this for a decade, it seems, I totally wholeheartedly agree with my colleague and colleagues that this is monumental. I'm excited about it. I don't think it precludes anything, but I think what it does also for us, which is our charge, is to keep an eye on the finances and how we can make sure we can fit this in the budget. And as discussions progress with compensation and so forth, then the board would make sure that we can actually, you know, incorporate that into our budget. So for me, I'm happy. It's not saying we're not going to be equitable in this, but it's also not binding us into that and our responsibilities, fiduciary responsibilities either, which is important to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Victor?
I want to thank the staff and our consultants for all of the work that they've put in over the last year now to really do a deep dive to enable us to assess the need and the barriers and develop a program that is going to much better serve our community. While I'm disappointed that we didn't make the decision to more quickly ramp up to enable all children to attend and create a truly universal program now, I feel really good about the details that we have worked through tonight, including in meeting the quality benchmarks that have been clearly defined in the research as necessary to have a high quality program. I think that this is a really important step forward. I remain very committed to working to figure out a dedicated local funding source. I am the school board representative along with the superintendent on the committee that will delve into the funding issue, and so I look forward after tonight to starting that conversation and doing the hard work of figuring out how we can create an additional local dedicated funding source to enable us to put this program in place and then to fully scale it up so that all children can participate and we can enable pre-K to have the impact that that it has the potential to have in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ms. Bondo?
I will support the proposal to move because this is a game change for different communities, because it's going to be one of the pathways to try to reduce the achievement gap. And then going to be an open door also for diversity in the teaching areas where they can bring the expertise also on a different aspect of the language, and also increase the support of the different programs who can really boost those language acquisition and have those 4 years old and have a foundation they really need to have. And I will support that.
Thank you. Anyone else? And then I will say that I'm going to enthusiastically support this motion. That it's almost midnight, and I am immensely proud of my colleagues today because we just deliberated for several hours, and all I heard was a lot of talk about equity, about whole students, about people, and about achievements. And that's what our work is supposed to do. That's what we've been charged to do, to look at our work through the Portland Promise goals. And we just had a whole lot of work. I'm not good. I don't normally feel like I'm very confident in the way that I run meetings because I'm still pretty new at it. And I feel really good about what we did today. I feel really, really good about it. We should all be really proud. Let's put it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the motion on the floor that's on the wall. Ms. Nally, you don't have to read it for us. Please indicate. All those opposed? That's all right. The motion passes to 7-1 vote with the students voting in favor. Thank you. Next, we have new business. Whoops. We have new business. It's a first read on the 2019-2020 school calendar. Is there a motion to adjourn the business meeting? Mr. Balfens, seconded by Ms. Trevorrow. All those in favor, please indicate. We're adjourned. Thank you all.